talk about the sort of Leeds-Doncaster Divide, shall we?
Is there one?
I don't know.
You're from York anyway.
Yeah, I'm
You're
sort of
posh.
If you talk about York, and York isn't posh, by the way, does the
I thought it was. It is,
yeah,
isn't it?
The only reason you go to York is because you go for a jolly anyway. You go to get
Yeah, well, it's a posh place.
Right.
It's posh in
Shall
Doncaster.
I take you around the bits that aren't posh? There's plenty of those.
Oh, I bet you know all those places, don't you?
Absolutely not.
So anyway, welcome to the podcast for Doncaster Jazz Alumni. Interestingly, you're not actually alumni of Dijo as we were, or Dijar, are you?
I'm not, no. I've come through much later in the process, and I was trying to think, actually, when I first met musicians from Doncaster, and I think it was probably...
Is it when you were doing Relish?
It was before that. It was when I started at Leeds College of Music, when I met Nadeem.
Wow.
So probably my first introduction was through him.
Right. It's probably not the right way to do it, is it? To meet like possibly the best sax player on the planet first.
It was certainly an eye opener.
It's a downwards, slippery slope from there.
When you've just left school as well, and then you start technically in an A-level course, and then Nadeem turns up at your rehearsal, and then it's
frightening.
Yeah, but then you realise where Nadeem kind of originated from and his story, and then you see there's a much bigger picture than just him. There's a real collective of musicians, and then through him there's other musicians I've met, like Gaz. I met him, and lots of people on gigs. You meet lots of musicians on gigs that have come through Doncaster. Yeah. And then you just start to form bands. I remember having a band with Nadeem at college.
Yeah.
And
what was that called?
Well, it was one of the ensembles that we have to do in first and second year, and because there wasn't many of us on the course, he was generally involved somewhere, either in the big band or in a small band. So that's my first Doncaster introduction, and then
you started. You've got to be one of the busiest musicians I know. You are all, and this is a compliment, by the way. Yeah. You don't get a lot of them from me, so
not normally.
Take it. You are, honestly, you're so busy, which is great, and you're so in demand. And I think, apart from the fact you're a great pianist and you're a good lad, but you're really professional as well. And I know from experience that when you do a gig, you proper do a good job. Like, you're very thorough on everything. And I think, like, where's that come from? Do you think? Because there's a lot of us, myself included, who are not like that. Not as much as that anyway. A bit slacker maybe.
I think it's more the necessity to know what you're doing before you turn up. I've always kind of been curious to do that, and I think with music, it's one of those sort of subjects where you can really get in depth with the music. And certainly when I was training, our teachers were very thorough with what we learned and things. So I think it's almost like knowing the music better than you have to do, so that when you get to a gig or a rehearsal or a recording, that you're not in that situation where I wish I'd done a bit of work before. So I think I've always had that in my kind of learning process, and then on a gig it just feels natural. I can just enjoy the gig, because that's what I do music for. There's obviously it's hard work at times, but I think if you enjoy it, that's why I always that's why I have a big smile on my face all gigs, because that's you get to that point where you just, I know what I'm doing, and there's obviously situations where I don't, but...
Yeah, you do have often, when I look across at you on the bandstand, you're always smiling. It's nice to see.
Yeah, I think I've always had that, because I've always felt that that's where I'm kind of most comfortable.
So how did you get into music in the first place? Because I know you used to do a lot of gigs with your brother, didn't you?
Yeah, so I'll tell you a little story. Talking about Doncaster, my first introduction. My first introduction was actually probably before Nadeem, because my first introduction to Doncaster was in Fox's Music. Wow. In the French Gate Centre.
You're not that old.
I'm not that old, but when we were kids, our first instruments came from that music shop in there, because that was the nearest music shop that sold. Well, it would have been Yamaha pianos,
organs and keyboards galore, wasn't it?
Yeah. And in York, where I come from, there was a few shops, but they certainly didn't do those kind of instruments. Right. So that was one.
So you've been to Fox's Music? That was in the Arndale, as it used to be called. It's the French Gate now. Back then it was the Arndale.
Then, yes. It was a bit of a kind of like walking in. It's a bit of a kid in the sweet shop situation, and there was all these nice instruments. And we've still actually got the piano that we had as a kid. Really? Still got it at home. Yeah. So
that's ace. You never told me that before.
No.
So obviously we just done this album, right? On the very first album that the Doncaster Jazz Orchestra ever recorded in 1978. I've got a copy at home, and it still has the price tag, and it says on it Fox's Music, and I think it's $2.99. So obviously, whoever, I think I got that off. I've borrowed it from Keith. Do you know Keith? Keith the repairer guy. You won't know him because you don't play woodwind instruments.
Is he based around
basically
here?
Keith Alderson is a repairer, and he was in Jar years ago. He's on the first album, so he lent me. I've got to give it him back actually, but so he must have bought it in Fox's, and it's still got the price tag on there.
It was quite a big shop.
It was a big deal back in the day, yeah.
And it's just when you're a kid, you go in there, and that's what you kind of you look at all these nice instruments, thinking that'll be great.
So how old were you when you started playing then?
So that was probably when I must have been like late 90s, so maybe like 97, 98 maybe. I think that's when I first started having lessons. So like you say, I did, my eldest brother started first.
Right.
And then like we all do, we kind of get curious, and then my middle brother also plays as well. And then we all
the
just had
youngest
lessons.
then?
I'm the youngest,
Right.
yeah. So when we all just had lessons, so we had lessons in, probably about 3 or 4 different teachers over the years. So one of the ones was in Pontefract. There was the Yamaha school there, and that was a really good place to go. Right. And then the teacher was called Darryl, and I think he's still there now. I think he still has his own music shop. And then we used to have piano lessons in York with a teacher, Heather. She's still teaching as well. And I think it was just, that's what we did as kids. We just did music. We didn't do sport or... Yeah. That was what we all did every night. It was 2 or 3 times a night. We'd have like piano lessons or organ or keyboard or... Brilliant. So that's probably why I missed out on perhaps the Doncaster scene and things, because we didn't really have any time. It was either... So is there an equivalent of Dijar in York? There was... My middle brother was actually involved in like a Saturday morning band. Yeah. I remember it a little bit. Does Ian Chalk run something like that? So Ian's kind of picked up where they kind of left off, because I think that the organisation was... I believe it was council run, or whatever, but obviously like a lot of councils... music tends to get kind of lost a bit, and then I think Ian's kind of made his own version of what that was, but kind of under his own banner. So, but Ian's very much the main figure in York for music education. Is he? From what I know from people still in York, I don't think there's much education in schools apart from Perry teachers. I think it's certainly nothing council run. Yeah. So I think Ian is, for jazz education, he is probably the main, he's got lots of different bands. A bit like Doncaster, different levels. And that's good to know. Abilities. But that wasn't around when you were a kid, obviously. Not when we were a kid. I think it was mainly like a Saturday morning band thing. But yeah, I think that just got diminished over the years, and then Ian's kind of taken it on himself, sort of thing. But what keeps popping up a lot in these podcasts with other members of DJA is the state of music education at the minute. Yeah. And it's just not looking great, is it? I mean, it's not terrible, because of people like Ian and, you know, but it's just, I just remember when I was, 14, 15, 16, not everyone, but you'd go to a band and there'd be loads of people, there'd be competition for places, and there was stuff going on all the time. And now it's like, I feel like kids aren't into music as much, or they're not, other than maybe having lessons and playing at home, they're not doing bands like we did. I think definitely the ensemble opportunities are very reduced. I mean, I think there's certainly kids having one-to-one lessons. Certainly in a couple of the schools that I teach at, one particularly is very keen to get children involved from certainly secondary school anyway. I think anything on an evening, like on after school, I think a lot of those organisations are very much run by people like Ian and kind of individuals rather than being run by a council or a bigger organisation. So I think the involvement from after school is certainly less. The opportunities to play in a band, I say that's when you often learn a lot more. I mean, because you can play in your bedroom, but there's only so many kind of backing tracks and YouTube videos you can play before it becomes... Exactly. A bit boring. And I think you meet people as well. Music's a sociable thing as well. That's exactly what it is. It's supposed to be done with other people. And that's one of the elements I love about music, is the fact that you do meet people. Yeah. You're always meeting new people. You're always kind of... And I think you forge those kind of relationships, and then you learn from each other, don't you? And I think if you don't have that and you just sat at home and you've only got, say, the internet and... yourself to learn, it's a lot harder. I think you certainly learn quicker with other people around you.
Yeah, but it's just more fun.
Well, that's exactly what it is.
That's what it is,
It's more fun to learn with other people around you.
Yeah. I wasn't a big practicer when I was younger. I'd probably ramp it up a bit before a grade exam, but I was playing so much in bands.
Yeah.
I was probably, at one point, I was in about 7 bands a week. So that in itself is going to make you get better without the practice. So if it weren't for these different things, I wouldn't have had just wouldn't have improved.
I think the thing I had when I was learning was one of the things we used to do in one of our music classes was our teacher, Frank, who we had for a while. He'd set up his own music school. He got us to play together.
Right.
And that's how we ended up forging our own band with my brothers, because we actually ended up playing piano, keyboard and organ together. And it was like a little mini ensemble.
Yeah.
And I think that's how you learn to listen to people, and you don't end up just kind of going off into your own world. It's you're very more conscious of the rhythm and the time and the kind of the way that you interact with other people.
Yeah.
And I think that's for young people now. It's certainly less opportunities to do that.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of kids are struggling to seek that as well. They don't really they see people and think it's too difficult. And sometimes you need a teacher or somebody just to say, well, you can do this. Yeah. You just need to do it this way, or you need to meet this person, or you need to discover this new music. Yeah. So I think you only get that with working with other people.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
you obviously that's a slightly different route for myself to playing and stuff like that. But we find ourselves in British Grove Studios in October of 2022. Yeah, that's right, isn't it?
2022. Yes, yes.
It seems like a lifetime ago. But obviously the album's out now. I really like it. I'm sure you do too. Is there anything particularly, anything about the album that you particularly enjoy either listening to or performing in gigs?
I think it was the bringing together everybody that's been involved, because I say what I've learned with meeting people in Doncaster, it's very much a countrywide. Everybody is based all over the country.
Yeah.
And although we rehearse in Doncaster, very much it exists all over. And I think that those 2 days that we had, it was all these people. I didn't even know you were involved in this over the years, and especially people like Andy Vinter, who I'd not met before. I'd heard his name mentioned in passing, but I was like. But to get him on the record and hear him play, it was that intro of Body and Soul, and it was like I'd never heard.
I was out of the building when that happened.
It was one of those fingertip moments. It was like, wow, one take.
I think I'd gone out to get a coffee. Even the first break I had, because I didn't have many.
Yeah.
And I went out for about an hour or so, came back in. You must have done one take of it. And I think it was Mark Saban. It was quite emotional. And he was like, I've just did one of the best things I've ever heard. I went, what happened? What happened? He's like, this intro. Yeah. And of course, I missed the whole thing. So I didn't hear it until the album came out. It's unreal.
It was one of those moments where everybody just dropped silent within about 4 bars. And it was like, this is someone who knows this music. Yeah. And it was like, you just sort of soaked it up. And it was like, wow. It was one of those kind of, certainly the highlights of the album for me. I think he was great to meet him. He's such a humble guy as well, and he sort of shared a lot of what he's doing at the moment.
He's a nice guy, isn't he?
He's got a lot of knowledge and a lot of things to share, certainly from a piano player's point of view. Yeah. And then, so I think another person involved is Al Wood. Yeah. Of course, he's really, for me, he's at the connection between Leeds and Doncaster, because having him involved was. I met Al many years ago at college.
I think a lot of the Leeds guys feel that way. And it's nice to have him around and doing it.
He's very much a figure that you think of Leeds College of Music, you think Al Wood, you think of all the people that have been through his kind of schooling. Yeah. And to have him on the bandstand and conducting is kind of pretty special for everybody involved, certainly in this setup.
Yeah, I agree.
So, and to see him at his favourite kind of position at the front of a band, counting us all in, was a real kind of...
On his birthday as well.
On his birthday as well. Yes, it was his birthday, wasn't it, on that weekend? But that was another highlight. And obviously, and just watching your dad having a great time as well, that was a real kind of... I know how much he enjoys the band and the music. That you can tell he's completely in love with the music. So that was...
Well, that's why he's been doing it for 50 odd years now. Yeah.
That's a credit to him for keeping everybody on the straight and narrow, as it were.
Yeah, but it's, you know, it's for me, it's as a, you know, die jar through and through. There's probably no one that's more through and through die jar than myself, because I was literally born into it and I've seen it all, you know, from, it was created the year before I was born. So my earliest memories are rehearsals, you know, being taken to rehearsals because my mum was at work or whatever. So me and my sister had to go to a rehearsal and be babysat by someone while Dad was doing his thing. So it's all I've ever known, really. So what's great for me is the fact that there are people like yourselves that didn't come through the ranks. So like Rob McGrath, yourself, now John and Kate, you know, people that have come in to help us and stayed. And I think that's really nice, that, because it like for us, it makes sense. We know why we're doing it. We're doing it because we're trying to give back to the association that helped us get to where we are. And we want the kids that are in it now to kind of benefit. That's why we're doing the album. So it's just really nice to see other people that didn't come through the ranks of Dijar still want to be involved and do their bit, because, you know, none of us get paid for it, and we give up, you know, we make a lot of sacrifices to do the rehearsals and the dates and stuff. So I just think it's great that we've got people like you doing that, because we wouldn't have a band if it wasn't for people like you.
I think for me it's a challenge. It's always a challenge because the opportunities to play big band music, certainly I didn't do it when I was younger, and I enjoyed it at college, and the opportunities to, because it's such a different situation to play in, and I think knowing that you've got someone like John that's really, really kind of he's so passionate about what he does, and it's like he'll come over with you with a new piece of music, and it's like he's excited to see you, and he wants to have got this new Bob Florence tune to learn, and he kind of is with you every moment. I think for me that's you just don't get that in any kind of any ensemble work that I ever do, and it doesn't almost feel like work. It just feels like we're just having a great time, and we're playing good music, and regardless of the fact that nobody's getting paid, it's not really about that. I think it's very much about that journey a little bit, and like I say, giving back to the young students that hopefully can carry it on for another 50 years.
Let's hope so.
Because we'll probably be all very old by then.
I'm probably not here at all in my case. But what did you think to France? Because that was your first French trip. Again, I've done thousands of those trips, so I knew what was coming. But there were a few of you that didn't, and I know part of me was like, just watching people from afar, seeing because it's a different type of thing, right? It's not really a tour, is it? It's not like
it felt like you were kind of with friends, even though obviously I'm ashamed to say I can't speak any French, and I felt quite bad for that. It felt like you were with friends, and you were kind of. There's a lot of history there, and I think it took me a while to kind of get up to speed. But then that first time when we got there, and we got welcomed by the mayor and all of the, and it was like, this just feels like you're going to a friend's house. And,
we were,
and we were looked after, and then we met Jeff, who put me and John up, and
brilliant.
Jeff was great, and he really into the music as well, and just enthusiastic. So. It was kind of an eye opener. It was an eye opener, and to think that's been going on for a lot of years, and they're still kind of doing it to this day, and it's credit to your dad again, and sort of making those relationships that last a lifetime almost in a way. And I say the gigs that we did were great, quite different kind of gigs. It's but just to get to play the music in front of a new audience and see their reaction and chat to them at the end.
That was good.
And it was a real kind of great. It's a great trip. Trip. It didn't feel like uncomfortable at all. It was like we were just in having some playing to your mates kind of thing. Yeah,
that's great to hear, because I know a lot of people were kind of like, oh, where am I going to stay? And even some of like the Doncaster guys are still, even to this day, a bit like they'd rather be in a hotel, and we're like, look, we get that, but that's not what it's about. Like, obviously, it's not. It's hard going to a complete stranger's house and sleeping on his sofa or in his spare bed or whatever. But we know at the end of it, you're going to be like, that was ace, because you actually get to live with a person and see their house and their family and and that's what we grew up doing through Dijar and stuff like that. So, hopefully we're going again next year if you want to come. Well, that's the plan.
I'll make sure my diary's clear.
Yeah, as soon as I get some dates, I'll let you know. But the
I'll
plan
learn
is
some French for them.
The plan is to go for Dad's 80th birthday, which will be February next year.
Right.
But we'll see. We'll see what happens. But thanks for coming on. This has been great chatting to you.
It's been great to chat about
We've both got rehearsal now, so we need to go.
We've got to switch our minds to a different set of
different
music.
style. Right. I'll see you at the rehearsal.
See you at the rehearsal.
See ya.
Cheers, Mark.